Am I the asshole for weaponizing my children? I'm on mobile and this happened tonight and I'm still fuming. Here it goes. I have 2 white sons. We live in a southern state. My family is middle-class whites. Having a pool party tonight and my mother decides to tell a story about a friend at work and drops the N-bomb hard RI. As I have many times before said, come on, I do not think y'all should use that word ever, but especially in front of my boys. Then my uncle, not really but always been around, and father and others decide to defend their right to use it. All the typical arguments of senile white men, i.e., it's just a word, they use it all the time. Do you know what NWA means? Have you heard rap songs lately? What if someone calls you a cracker, etc. I maintain my stance if I don't want it being used in earshot of my blossoming white males. For obvious reasons, at least to me. I'm saddled with responses such as, I would never say it to them or at them. I told them that because of their lack of give a shit and example set by them. I used to think that word was acceptable for me to say and I've grown and learned and they should too. Okay, I could drag this story out forever. Here's where I believe I could possibly be the awe. My sister interjects and says vocally, what's up my Nyers? I shot up and said, boys, get out of the pool, we're going home and you're not spending the night at grandma's, which caused a fiasco. I stood my ground and made it clear this is a hill I'm willing to die on, and unless this bullshit changes we will not be at parties or family functions. So, am I the asshole for using my children as tools to try and force my family to change their ignorant ways? Edit to add. Holy shit, this blew up whilst I slept. I honestly don't think I can or will reply to everyone. I'm sorry and thankful for your opinions. Look. To the people attacking me in private chat. I called them blossoming white males because they are children, and I think white males have the most important role in being a positive change in society. It was hyperbole. If that's what you focused on, my bad. I had steam coming out of my ears last night. I'll definitely update y'all, but I'm fairly confident it will not be for a while. I don't plan on backing down and don't care how old or set in their ways people are. We can all change if we choose to. Second edit, I am a white male. Thanks for assuming my gender though, s. I have assaulted persons in bars who think it's okay to use this word to denigrate others. I'm only ashamed that I chose violence, not that I stood up. I understand where my response was misconstrued because y'all don't know who I am or what I stand for. In Texas, people have guns. Not just black people. Third edit, I've now learned that people responding in messages are mostly banned from this sub. Big lol. Makes sense. Thank you all for your opinions. Even the shit ones. I'm going to shut this down and make my maturing or growing synonyms for blossom, boys some breakfast. I love you all whether you are a racist or not. You can still change if you want, and I think if you stand up for what's right you may help others change. Obviously just my belief. Peace. Call me hand medium skin tone. Fourth and reluctant edit. I used the term weaponize because I fully intend to use my children's time spent at their grandparents as a weapon to enact change. If they can't change, they can't interact. If they can't respect that there is no place for white people to use this word and actively condemn it regardless of how they grew up, then I will drop bombs. Not the asshole teaching your kids what is acceptable behavior as part and parcel of being a parent. Not the asshole, this is the responsible thing to do, and considering the social climate of today is safest for your children. Children repeat what they hear and you don't want them to get beat up for repeating words that shouldn't even exist in their vocabulary. Make sure to also speak to your children about what words are not to be used, and that if they hear someone say those words that they need to tell you and get away from that person. Not the asshole. I don't see this as weaponizing your kids. More like not allowing them spend time with toxic people. Make sure you talk about race with your kids and explain why you left. NTA at all. You cannot stop your children from hearing that word, but you can keep your children from being around ignorant fools who spout slurs for no goddamn reason. Good for you for keeping your boundaries. Not the asshole. You'd be full of regret if they came home after staying with them and they started saying that word and telling you, it's not that bad, they said it was okay. You're not weaponizing your children, you're choosing to raise respectful men, and then, they can be used as weapons against racism. Not the asshole. Racism is disgusting. You've set a good example. Not the asshole, not so much weaponizing but protecting them from potential learned racist behavior. Respectfully, fuck yo family. Not the asshole. I wouldn't say you're weaponizing your children as much as you are just removing them from a hazardous, uncomfortable environment. Am I the asshole, M37, for telling my son, M16, he is a failure? Edit. For those asking about depression, ADHD, his mom took him to a shrink and he has nothing. He's not depressed nor has any learning problems, he just doesn't want to do anything. I take away his Xbox to make him study and he purposefully puts the opposite answers on his test. I suppose it's just a phase, but it's getting stressful because the next few months are going to make or break his adult life. I'm just scared. Edit 1. Thank you for your helpful answers as well as the death threats I just got sent in private. Some of you asked if he's interested in anything, and he actually had interest in becoming a Marine like I used to be. However, when we sat down to actually talk about him enlisting, he didn't pay attention at all and say all he cared about was that he wouldn't have to study a lot. I'd also like to mention I am not a violent person. I had held in this anger mixed with stress inside of me for months when I called him a failure, though I did not get physical. My 16-year-old son and I are pretty close. I'm not actually that old of a parent. I had him when I was super young in the military. I've sacrificed a lot for him and go out of my way to treat him like a young adult. We hang out every day and have a good relationship, I would like to think. I didn't have a dad growing up, so I don't have much to go off of, but I'm doing my best to what I know I would have wanted as a teenager. I don't give him things, he earns them. I hold him to zero expectations other than to be a good person and have manners. He does what I ask of him without any questions. He has enough wiggle room to have freedom but still restrictions for his age. Bedtime is 10:30, which I don't really enforce, but he does willingly on his own. I'd like to think I'm doing a decent job of freedom with structure. That being said, here's my problem. He's lazy AF. Like more than teenager lazy. I don't care about the sleeping until 10:30 a.m. kinda thing, or his room isn't clean all the time. This kid has zero ambitions for life. He's completely content to just exist and play Xbox. That's it. Period. No goals, no dreams, no motivation, nothing. I've tried everything, sat him down and asked what his game plan is, and he's like man shrugging he's terrible at school. Always has been, and he's skated by on the seat of his pants. He failed 9th grade, half his fault, half the school, COVID. They pushed him through to 10th grade, okay fine. He failed 10th grade by his own doing. Refused to do anything, turn anything in, complete anything. He was so lazy he didn't even want to push a button to turn on his webcam to get counted for attendance in PE. We just had a conversation over the phone with his counselor, fully expecting him to repeat 10th grade with him accepting this on his own. Nope, they're pushing him through to 11th grade. The school made up their own transcript for him and passed him for classes he failed. I pulled up his report cards for 10th grade. They're completely different than the one the school made up. So I tried to get my son to finally work, but he refused and I snapped. I went on a small rant calling him lazy and a failure before leaving the room. We haven't talked in 8 hours, but I fear I may have gone too far. So Reddit, am I the asshole? Please read the edits, it's the only way I can progress. Exclamation mark. You are the asshole. That was a low blow. This sounds like a very frustrating situation though. Have you had him evaluated for ADHD? This sounds more like a teenager's version of how they think parenting goes, or rage bait, but I'll take it with a grain of salt for now. You are the asshole. Your kid isn't a failure. You failed your kid. You are the asshole. COVID came along during his more formative years. Have you considered that the kid may be suffering from depression? You are definitely the asshole. You said yourself that you have no expectations of him except for to be a good person, right? So you're setting the standard for him to be low automatically. Do you at all have a concern that you might be too lenient of a parent, because if you don't set boundaries and expectations he's not going to have anything to bounce off of them grow from, so if all he wants to do is sit around and play Xbox, then take away the Xbox or make him earn his right to use the Xbox by doing well in school. You are the asshole. Calling him lazy is one thing, but calling a 16-year-old a failure is quite unnecessary. Not having a passion at 16 is fine. Some people get motivation by encouragement and some need to be called out, and that's fine. However, it seems that you calling him lazy and a failure is not to motivate him but to punish him. If you truly just wanted him to work harder, there are better ways to do that. You are the asshole way to be a supportive parent. Is he lazy or is he depressed? What do you do to make sure he's turning in homework? Has he ever been diagnosed with a learning disability? You are the asshole that's taking it too far, it's too personal. From what you've said, I think he might be depressed. Maybe take him to a therapist because he probably won't open up to you. Side note. He's 16, he's not a child, he can literally get a girl pregnant. Lose his reins and let him grow up. Freedom might make him happier and help him mature. There's no shame I'm him being unsuccessful, without a high-paying job or hundreds of A's if that's what he wants. But at least give him the freedom to be his own person and the experience to grow up. You are the asshole. There's most likely something else going on there that you don't know about. He could be depressed, he could have a learning disability, other type of disability, and be depressed because of that. Now you call him a failure? He's not going to act like it hurts him, but I can promise you it does, and it will stick with him forever. Am I the asshole for hogging the bed and pretending to be deep asleep so my husband would go to work? I'm an RN and work roughly 60 hours a week, give or take. I'm on call bi-weekly, so every other week is closer to 70 hours. I'm 29F. My husband of 9 years is 30M and lately has been going through a lazy spell. It happens probably once every few years, where he just won't go to work because he is too tired, or simply doesn't feel like it. In the past when this has happened he has lost his employment, and I can't afford to have that happen right now. We are paying for his brother's chemo on top of an $1,800 mortgage. For those questioning why my mortgage is so high, it's a massive 8-bedroom home that his parents and brother, with cancer, were supposed to move into with us, but they never did, so now we are stuck with the whole bill. Anyways, as I said, he is back on his lazy spell. Yesterday his alarm went off about 8 times before he finally just shut it off and went to sleep. The day before he went to work but left early because he was pissed and tired. Last night he didn't go to sleep until around 11 even though he had to be up for 530 am. This man does not function on anything less than 8 hours of sleep, so I knew what was going to happen. I went into the living room and hid the remote, filled the coffee pot and set a timer for the early morning so coffee was already brewed for him. He is OCD about wasting, so I knew this would make him stay awake to drink the coffee versus waste it and hopefully go to work. And then I unplugged his iPad so it would die and be unable to use that as an excuse. He plays that thing damn near constant. I also packed his lunch and left a note saying to have a good day. This morning his alarm went off and he gets up to use the restroom. Immediately afterwards he tries to come back in and lay down. I scoot myself across the bed so he has no room. We have no other beds despite the huge house, and he wants sleep on the couch because it's stiff. He tries waking me and pushing me over. I start fake snoring. He then goes to the kitchen and the timer on the pot starts going off. I hear him start cursing and pours himself a cup. I then hear him moving things around trying to find the remote, and having no other option and nothing to do, he went to work. Plan worked. He texts me about an hour ago and says, "I can't prove it, but I know you did all of this deliberately this morning and I'm not okay with you stripping me of my decision making. I didn't want to be here and your control is ridiculous." Am I the asshole? It's either he works or I can't pay for his brother's chemo. ETA. I've tried having conversations with him prior to this with spreadsheets of our finances and our incomes. I am capped off at $3,100 a month for pay and our bills are $3,600 with his brother's chemo. He brushes it off and says we will figure it out because I make good money and handle work better than him. I don't think he understands I have a cap on pay and never get more than $3,100. And I've suggested therapy. He won't. I've suggested selling the home and he won't, stating that someday his parents will move in. Not the asshole. The fact he is mad at you instead of embarrassed that he had to be pressured to go to work is concerning. This behavior has cost him jobs in the past and he hasn't learned his lesson. If sleeping in is more important than helping with his brother's chemo, I'd be seriously reconsidering the relationship. This is not a person you can depend on. I'd strongly suggest therapy if he's not already going. There are multiple issues this could help him with. Having a loved one go through cancer is emotionally taxing. But since he's done this multiple times in the past, it doesn't excuse this behavior. If he doesn't address these issues though, are you comfortable having an unreliable partner who gets angry when you push them to do the responsible thing? Not the asshole. No offense, but your husband sounds like an immature, irresponsible loser. You can do better. Not the asshole. What exactly does your husband do for work? You went above and beyond to hold him responsible for his own choices. I happen to think how you handled it was hilarious. Not the asshole, but I do think your husband may have some mental health issues. These repeating, lazy spells could be depression or anxiety, and he doesn't know how to process these feelings. Not the asshole. Your husband is being a baby. He is not working just for himself now. He is part of a family unit and needs to pull his own weight. You need to have a conversation with him though. You can't do this forever. It's not sustainable. I might also suggest selling your home and downsizing since you won't need that big house after all. It sounds like he and you could both benefit from therapy. NTA. But like, why are you on this situation? Not the asshole, but you guys might need therapy, seeing at what you have to set up to get him to go to work. Perhaps even individual for him, because he might have underlying issues if those lazy spells keep repeating. Not the asshole. Husband is being unreasonable. You should talk to him though instead of behaving like his mother. It won't help to mother him long term. Sell the house, it's a seller's market right now, apparently, and get one you can afford so that if he does lose his job you don't also lose your home. Am I the asshole for not working Christmas Day as a nurse? Before I, 31 female, get started, let me just be clear, I am no longer a nurse and this isn't a recent story. I'm asking, am I the asshole now because it had been raised in a discussion I had with someone, a nurse, I spoke with earlier. Okay, so I went into nursing straight after high school and worked as a nurse throughout most of my 20s. I'm now in my 30s and work in a completely different field. I left nursing because, to put it quite bluntly, I just couldn't hack it. I really enjoyed caring for people but found the workload overwhelming. Anyway, during my time as a nurse, I worked in a small private hospital in which I was employed on a full-time basis. The nursing staff were all women, and except for myself and another nurse, they were also mothers. The shifts in this hospital were like any other: morning, afternoon and night duty. Although unlike most facilities, our shifts didn't change and we had set days we worked. Covering shifts if required were usually not a problem, as there was almost always someone available. If not, and because we don't have any casual staff on the roster, we'd have to call in an agency temp nurse to cover our shift, which our boss tried to avoid as much as possible. The only time there'd be an issue would usually be over public holidays, particularly Easter and Christmas, when everyone wanted time off. For the first few years of my employment there, I was single, childless and lived in another state from my family and didn't really have anything planned for the holidays, so I had no problem covering those shifts, and therefore I was usually the go-to person if they needed to be replaced. That changed after I got into a relationship. That particular year, Christmas again didn't fall on any of the rostered days which I was to work, so I planned to spend it with my boyfriend and his family. I would still work during the week but had no plans on covering any shifts. This caused a problem with one of my colleagues who planned to have me cover her shift for that day, as she was unable to have her leave approved. When I told her my reason as to why I couldn't, she seemed visibly upset and walked off. I later found out she had called me selfish and that spending Christmas with a boyfriend isn't as important as spending it with your children. Another colleague tried to talk to me about it, and when I still refused to cover it, she said that I was young and naive, and when I had children of my own, I'd understand. I've now grown older, and although still childless, I've yet to understand what I did wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, I discussed this incident with another nurse who told me it was a shitty thing for me to do and that I should have been more empathetic with her situation as a single mother, which is why I'm asking now, am I the asshole? TLDR, as a nurse I refused to work a Christmas Day shift I usually would have no problem with, to help a colleague out. Edit. I'm sorry if there's too much info included, I've just realized how long it is. Not the asshole. You weren't scheduled to work, and the other nurse shouldn't have just assumed that you could just cover her shift. Yeah, she had a kid and whatnot, but the schedule is the schedule. Not the asshole. Their having kids has absolutely nothing to do with you. And even parents can't always have their way, just because they have kids. Not the asshole. I am so sick of people always assuming that because someone, usually a woman who doesn't have children, are to cover for anyone and everyone who does have children on certain days, especially Christmas. Not the asshole. Not by a long shot. Not the asshole, you covered people's shifts when you didn't have to. You're entitled to a Christmas off when you previously didn't get one. If you never worked Christmas it would be different, but if it was only 1 year you didn't when someone asked, that's not too bad. OMG, of course you're not the asshole. And fuck anyone who thinks you are. You weren't scheduled to work and didn't have to cover for anyone if you didn't want to. Even if you just wanted to sleep all day or binge watch a TV show or do anything else, you would still not be the asshole. Not the asshole. The right to have a holiday off is not limited only to people with children. That's ridiculous. Besides, you had already spent several years working holiday shifts without complaint. You didn't owe your coworkers anything. Think about it, if you had stayed working as a nurse in that hospital, and you never had kids, does that mean that you would be morally required to work every holiday shift for the rest of your career? Absolutely ridiculous. While I do understand the pressure that a single working mother is under, and Christmas is usually a different sort of deal when you have small kids, your coworker did not have the right to take it out on you and guilt you when you didn't want to work a shift to which you were not assigned. You also had plans, with your own loved ones. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Your coworkers were presumptuous. Not the asshole. You've just as much right to taking a day off as anyone else. The reasons behind wanting to take your day off that you've earned are irrelevant.